And we are back with the second part of the morning. Welcome to all of you. Now, for those of you following us online, I hope you appreciated the session on the startups. It was online directly. You will be able to see the replay as well as the replay of the whole forum as of next week. So we are at the heart of this Forum for Ag 2021, and the rest of the morning will be dedicated to, first of all, an exchange with our keynote speaker. I'm going to introduce him in a few minutes, and we'll have another roundtable on sustainability standards and trade agreements. That will be in a few minutes. But just as a reminder, you can always ask your questions online. You have a box that will allow you to leave your questions in French or in English, whatever you want, and you can react also throughout the day with the hashtag ForumforAg on the social media. You can also, throughout the day, go to the virtual platform of this Forum for Ag 2021. The address is www.forumforagriculture.com. You can use the chat. You also have access to the exhibition areas, and you can also download sustainable recipes. And it's almost lunchtime, so it's perfect timing. This will take place under the cooking thumbnail. Now, I would like to introduce Dominique Chargé. Thank you. Hello, Dominique Chargé. Thank you very much for being with us. You are our keynote speaker for this Forum 2021. You are a farmer, you have cows and poultry. You also vice president of Terrena, but also president of France Agrimer Specialized Council. What do you want to share with us today, Dominique Chargé? Well, thank you. Thank you very much for this introduction. I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak in this forum. Now, just to correct one thing, I'm no longer in charge of, I'm no longer vice president, as you said, of the France Agrimer, but I do work in a cooperative. Let me remind you what a cooperative is. It's a group of farmers who have access to this cooperative to advice. We have 2,300 cooperatives throughout the French territory, all of different sizes, and they represent about 70% of the French production and 40% of the processing of products. You probably know a few brands that belong to cooperatives, even though you might not know that they belong to cooperatives. For instance, Florette, Nicolas Feuillat, Entremont, Paysan Breton, La Nouvelle Agriculture, brands that you can find in your stores. What I would like to share with you this morning is, well, I'd like to go back to the strange situation we went through lately. Of course, I'm talking about the COVID crisis, which reminds us how important food is for us. It's vital. And actually, European populations have had a tendency to forget this since the last World War, I would say. And we are happy to see that the French food chain up until now has been able to take up this challenge. It has been able to adapt and to continue fueling this chain to feed the French. And this was underscored. And I'd like to say that it is thanks to the commitment of farmers, men and women in France also, who took up this challenge. And, you know, in 2020, January, when the lockdown started, it was a big, big challenge to take up. In any case, this situation led to many questions, including political questions around this challenge. And I'd like to share a few thoughts on that. Now, I'll talk about the French situation, but I'll talk about the European scale too. And in France, for about a decade, we have been observing an erosion of our sovereignty. France used to be the breadbasket of Europe. It is no longer the case. Our country, within the last 10 years, has lost this position. So since 2018. And actually, right now, we are even losing our food sovereignty in terms of a trade balance. If we isolate the liquid and solid in the plates of French people, we see that we import a lot of solid food. More than 50% of the poultry is imported. Same thing with fruits that we consume in France. We're a country that export potatoes, for instance, to import from the same countries that get our products, transformed products, processed foods such as the potato chips or fries. So this raises issues around the loss of our production capacity, hence our food sovereignty at national scale. This loss of competitiveness is also happening because of three factors that lead to a loss in terms of competition. Taxation is one of them. We have a production rate in France that is quite high compared to other European countries, twice as high as in Germany, for instance. So a lot of taxation, and we lose social competitiveness because of this also. We have constraints on the environmental sector because of European transpositions. Our country has also lost its capacity to invest because of a loss in margins. And this has been going on for about 20 years. A loss in margins. We've lost more than 15 points in the agribusiness field in terms of margins. We were at 53% of margins in 1990, and today we only have 38% in terms of margins, and we have high pressures and difficulties to maintain our margins. So these are clear factors that led to a loss of competitiveness and of our French sovereignty. However, the challenges we have to take up this century require a rethinking about the way we want to act. The first main challenge is the population challenge. Tomorrow we will have to feed 9 billion inhabitants on our planet. And this is very important in terms of geopolitical stability. And France, Europe also, but France within Europe has a key role to play. So this is really important for us to be able to feed the world population with high expectations in terms of consumption, and they are more and more fragmented areas. The second challenge we need to take up is, of course, linked to climate change. We need to limit our carbon footprint, hence need to take into account the carbon impact throughout our production chain. And the third challenge is the environmental challenge. We mentioned this during the last roundtable. Of course, we need to also limit the environmental impacts of our activities, mitigate climate change. In order to do all this, and to take up all these challenges while guaranteeing geopolitical stability and protecting our planet, the agricultural cooperation today wants to solve an equation: competitiveness of our activities and implementation of transition schemes, whether climate, environmental, or agricultural schemes. We need to be competitive again on all the markets. As I said earlier, we need to feed all the populations. We need a faster ecological transition. We need to recreate consensus among citizens and build trust and a new relationship with our consumers. And work on production while not forgetting about fair remuneration of farmers who feed us throughout the territory. So, of course, we also need to stay attractive and to renew the generations in our agricultural sector. This question of competitiveness and of agricultural and ecological transitions focus on responsible growth. We need to really focus on sustainable growth because that is what will help us guarantee our food sovereignty. This cannot be done efficiently if we don't focus on the sustainable growth at the European level. So that entails that we need to meet consumers' expectations wherever they are and whatever they consume. We need to also, of course, remain competitive. Our companies need to be competitive. This is how we will take up this global population challenge. We need to do it as a responsible player. So we need to really consider changing our production methods, reduce our environmental and carbon footprints. We need to also invest so as to find alternative solutions to our current modes of production, which use lever with high carbon footprints. So our rationale needs to bring us to carbon neutrality. And all the players in the agricultural field have to be involved. We need to invest on decarbonization of our sector. This is really key if we want to reduce our environmental impact. And to do this, we should absolutely not oppose production models. On the contrary, we need to make them converge. And that will help us find solutions to the problem. Of course, according to us, there is no, it's not possible to merely reduce production to take up these climate challenges and environmental challenges. And we see that in such scenarios, the gains in terms of the reduction of carbon footprint, for instance, are neutralized because they entail imported products that offset and cancel or even have more perverse effects on the carbon footprint. So today, the Green Deal needs to take this into consideration, and the farm to fork and the biodiversity strategy, for instance, need to really take into account such a scenario that will increase imports, and this will be counterproductive in terms of carbon footprint. So the agricultural cooperation wants to strive to reach this collective rationale at European level. We need to work with the French and European authorities and all the players in our sector, and of course all the stakeholders, and I mean here civil society and all the players who are concerned and who want a better way of producing and consuming. So we are all players of this vitality on our territory. And we're talking about players who intervene throughout the food chain from end to end, from production to marketing of products. And this is why our cooperative wants to really help in the conquest of this food sovereignty. But we won't be able to do this alone. We absolutely need support from public authorities, of course, but also from other partners in Europe. The strategies need to be European. And we need more of Europe, but a better Europe also. This is also an opportunity for us. The opportunity to think about what we're going to do when we hold the presidency of the EU. It's an opportunity to push our ambitions at European level. So, of course, the first half of 2022, France will be heading the European Union. And we have a limited amount of time to be really active. But we should not forget our ambitions. This French presidency must be the lever of our food sovereignty, or at least one of the levers. At the French scale, we have 3 goals: recovery, strength, and belonging. This is what was presented by the French presidency to start the presidency with a community approach. Recovery first. We want to make sure that we can solve this complex equation of competitiveness and implementation of the transitions. We need to guide innovative European policies. New technologies must be included into our schemes through genetics, of course, which is a key lever. We need to resort to all the available technology so as to adapt all of our production modes to these challenges. So the digital technologies also, in order to track our processes, improve them. We need to use robotics also in this transition so as to also be have jobs that are more attractive and less difficult. We need to use genetics also at European level, and biocontrol also. These 4 levers really must be used at European level. We must finance and support these transitions. It's a long-term process. Of course, this can only be seen in the long run. We cannot only focus on the short term, and we have to be very cautious. We need to make sure that these new technologies and all these innovations which are going to be used are well used. Strong support is needed in this field. And of course, we need to make sure we reduce our carbon footprint and that our new energies are not based on carbon releases. Food sovereignty must become a pillar in the autonomy of the EU. This is what I meant by strength. It's a major sovereignty challenge here. We need to understand the extent of this pillar. Impact studies have to be carried out so as to analyze European strategies and not limit ourselves to theories according to which only a decrease in production would be taken into account. We need to find better options so as to really be more autonomous in the French and European agricultural sector and less dependent on imports also at French scale, but also European scale. We need to make sure our investments are redirected towards the right industries, and we need to reindustrialize the production part at European and French levels once again. Also, we need to make sure that our farmers and French companies have the means to defend themselves against international competition. So we need to introduce schemes so as to protect farmers from imports that are distorting competition and that don't comply with European standards. So we need mirror clauses in the different strategies, whether trade strategies or others at European level. Last, a sense of belonging. We need to promote our food and agri-food model in Europe. We need fair market access, better consistency at European scale so as to guarantee the absence of distortions in competition between member states. And we need better convergence in terms of taxation, social schemes, and more cohesion overall at European level. We need to homogenize, for instance, the transposition of European standards. So this food sovereignty today is a key and requires active role from leaders, public authorities. Consistency is needed, support as well, so as to get back this food sovereignty at French and European level. The agricultural cooperation is key also in this scheme. Without a strong Europe, without a united Europe, without this community strength and this common will at European level, there will be only losers, whether farmers, companies, cooperatives, but also consumers, citizens. These food challenges, competition challenges, energy, climate challenges, all these challenges must be dealt with at European level and can only be dealt with in a consistent Europe that is united, and thanks to a Europe that is sovereign, inclusive, and responsible. And this is actually the title of our platform for the French presidency of the EU. So we want a Europe in which we have high ambitions for agriculture and agribusiness at a moment when we are going through key transitions for the 21st century. Thank you very much, Dominique Chargé. Thank you for these thoughts on a sovereign Europe. A very quick question in a few seconds only. Could you tell us what distorts competition right now? Well, I think that at European level, whenever there is a distortion of competition, Europe is weaker at international level. So the other industries, the other regions in the world can use this as a lever, and it weakens Europe. So what distorts competition mainly, I mentioned this, but it's the social lever, taxation also. We saw that there were great disparities between taxation of production between European countries and the environmental lever also. There are great gaps in terms of rules and transposition of laws at European level. Thank you very much, Dominique Chargé. Thank you. He was our keynote speaker.